In this episode, we're going to be considering the many things in choosing a kayak. There are so many brands on the market and there are so many price ranges. We're going to consider the categories as well as the quality differences and what makes them different in price and why. Well, the big difference is the way they're constructed. And this picture is of a roto-molding machine. And it really is a big difference in cost. Manufacturing differences make a big difference in the cost of the kayak. These cheaper brands are made using a different method of production that makes for a much cheaper product, both in price and quality. This method is called thermoforming. It involves pouring melted plastic into two molds, one for the bottom of the hull, one for the deck. Then the two halves are combined and sealed, leaving a seam all the way around the kayak, where the upper and lower halves have been combined. This process doesn't involve super expensive equipment and is a quick way of producing kayaks. But as you can imagine, that seam in the kayak can and does result in durability issues down the road. Despite manufacturers' claims, this process just doesn't stack up to the quality you get from another process known as roto-molding. In the roto-molding process, the result is a one-piece kayak with no seam. A large two-piece metal mold is filled with powder, plastic, and a very expensive crane lifts the entire plastic-filled mold into a gigantic, expensive oven. There are essentially three categories of kayaks for you to consider when purchasing one. One is the recreational kayak. Two is the fishing kayak, and it comes in several forms: pedal, paddle, and motorized. And then for the adrenaline junkies out there, there is the whitewater kayak. As you can see, it looks really, really different. So we're going to talk about there's two designs of these kayaks, both in the recreational and for the fishing. Sit in and sit on. Both of them have their advantages, and there's a difference in cost between the two. Now between these two, you can choose a pretty good kayak for yourself. One is the sit-in. It's much lower in cost typically, unless you're in a whitewater situation. It's harder though to get in and out, so depending on your physical capabilities, you want to choose this one very wisely. It is very stable because you're sitting in the water line, and that's a nice thing about it. But if you do tip, and you will tip, it will fill with water, so you're going to have to pump it out. It's harder to turn back over, and it's much harder to get back into. This is usually a toy for many people because you can get these very inexpensively, use it on a weekend every once in a while in the summer. So you want to keep that in mind. Now, the sit-on, much easier to get in and out of. It's self-bailing. That means it won't fill with water. It'll empty itself. It's got holes in it, and it doesn't sink. Can be very stable and much roomier, and it's a vehicle to enjoy your hobby with. So you'll find that the majority of kayaks on the market are sit-on. Size and fit is probably the most important thing for you to consider. There's a lot to consider here, but the two most obvious is your height and your weight. Those are important. Make sure that the kayak can support your weight and more, because you're going to put a lot of stuff in your kayak too. So make sure that you accommodate that added poundage. And then of course we fluctuate. And then make sure that you fit in it physically. So not only your width, but also your length. So if you're tall, in the 6 foot range, 6'2", 6'4", you're going to need something much longer than these shorter kayaks. Now I suffer from physical problems that affect my balance and endurance. Therefore, I needed to pick a paddler's kayak, something easy to paddle, and one that was very stable with the ability to access and exit with ease. So it's real important that I needed that. I also wanted a kayak that I could grow with and not re-spend money for my fishing hobby. I wanted it to last. Also, transporting is a consideration as well. Can you lift it? Do you have a trailer? Do you have a pickup truck, etc.? So understand the logistics of kayaking and ask yourself, can I do it? And this is where you have to be honest with yourself. Ask yourself these questions, and it'll help put you in certain categories. So, the recreational. Ask yourself, do I just want to use this a few times in the summer? Occasionally. And just have fun. Have it an occasional toy. Think about how often you'll be using this. Fishing. Now, this is my category. How serious am I about my fishing hobby? How often do I do it? Do I have readily accessible fishing spots nearby? Because that has a lot to do with the frequency of your use. Also, when you're considering a fishing kayak, what's your budget? It has a lot to do with it too. Don't go in debt for this, but make sure that it's practical for you and something that'll last. Do you fish in tournaments? Do you make money on this hobby? Those are things that may put you into something like a pedal or motorized fishing kayak. And then whitewater. This is the adrenaline junkie. And this is a person that doesn't even ask a question. It just says, I just need excitement and have white water near me. So this person is just, I don't know, a daredevil on the water. And make sure that you have somebody to go with you. That's something that's very nice too. All right, let's summarize this up. First, stay within your budget. There are good kayaks in all price categories. Do you want a kayak that can grow with you, or just be used for a weekend once in a while? Purchase one you fit in, and that can accommodate your abilities. See a dealer that specializes in kayaks to help answer your questions. You will want to test choices out on the water. Now, I rented the model I purchased prior to making a decision. That was really handy. And kayak dealers will work with you on these things. Don't forget the add-ons, the paddle, the PFD personal flotation device, safety equipment, and other ancillary accessories, things like rod holders and crates and anchors, and maybe even with me, you'll see in a minute with my pictures, some outriggers that helped me stabilize my kayak. Keep that in mind. Fish finders too. Doing it right, getting all these things sort of put together, do your homework. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Be happy to help answer your questions. But if you do it right, you're going to have a great time on the water. And it'll be a lasting time on the water. That's me in my kayak, just yesterday actually. And you could see some of the things that you're going to be doing to your kayak. You're going to buy things for it. You're going to make sure that it's safe for you. And your kayak is going to be your personal boat that will morph into you. It'll be something that will cater to your abilities, your likes, your dislikes. And in the end, you're going to have a great time out on the water.